What if I told you the shortest surah in the Qur'an carries one of the greatest miracles in the Prophet's life? A surah of only 3 verses, revealed at a moment of deep pain and filled with unimaginable blessings. They mocked the Prophet, but Allah answered with a promise that changed history forever. This is the surah Allah sent to heal a broken heart and silence an entire nation. 3 verses, 1 promise. A miracle that still echoes today. Makkah was unusually still that night. The desert winds rested, and the streets lay silent beneath a sky full of muted stars. It was the kind of quiet that settled not out of peace, but out of heaviness. A silence that seemed to echo the weight in the heart of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him. He walked slowly through the narrow paths of the city, the soft sand shifting beneath his feet. The lamps in the homes were dim. Doors were shut. The world slept. Yet inside him, a storm of grief was awake. He had buried another child. The pain of losing a child is a wound no parent fully recovers from. And for the Prophet, this loss came at a time already filled with hardship. Life in Makkah was not easy. The message he carried, the message of the one true God, had divided the city. Many rejected him, mocked him, and looked for any weakness to use against him. And now, the death of his son became another weapon in their hands. As he walked, the whispers began. They floated behind him like arrows wrapped in poison. Look at him. Muhammad has been cut off. No son, no legacy. When he dies, his message will die with him. Some did not even bother to hide their cruelty. They smirked openly, satisfied with their own bitterness. In their eyes, lineage meant everything. A man with no surviving sons was a man whose name would fade into nothing. But what they did not know was that Allah sees every pain, hears every whisper, and records every injustice. The Prophet did not respond to them. He did not turn back. He did not defend himself. His heart was too pure for hatred, too focused on Allah's mission to waste a breath on cruelty. Yet the words still hurt, not because he cared about the opinion of men, but because it revealed the darkness inside their hearts. It was painful to witness how far humans could fall in their arrogance. He reached a quiet corner of Makkah, where the moonlight spread across the sand like a thin silver veil. He paused there, not to complain, not to question, but simply to breathe in the stillness of the night and gather his strength. And that was the moment when the unseen world shifted. Something soft, gentle, and indescribable filled the air around him. A calmness that did not belong to the earth, a peace that came from a world beyond sight. The wind carried a faint tremble, as though creation itself sensed the arrival of something divine. Invisible to human eyes, angels descended, their presence filling the night with a silent radiance. They came not with swords or warnings, but with a message of healing, a message of honor, a message that would forever silence those who mocked him. The Prophet raised his head slightly, recognizing the familiar weight of revelation, a weight that was not heavy, but powerful, as if his heart was being filled with light. Then the words descended, not like human speech, not like poetry, not like anything this world could produce. It came with a purity that washed over his grief like a tide erasing footprints in the sand. Inna ataynaka al-Kawthar. Indeed, we have given you al-Kawthar. In one moment, the cruelty of the Quraysh was shattered. In one verse, Allah lifted the Prophet from the depths of sorrow to the heights of divine promise. This was not just comfort. This was honor. This was Allah declaring that his Prophet was not cut off. He was chosen, elevated, and blessed beyond imagination. The verse was short, but its meaning stretched wider than the heavens. Al-Kawthar, a river in paradise, a symbol of abundance, a guarantee that the Prophet's legacy would outlive every enemy who wished him harm. The revelation continued, each word carrying mercy, strength, and reassurance. It was as if the night itself leaned in to listen, as if the earth wanted to absorb these verses forever. By the time the revelation ended, the silence of Makkah had changed. It was no longer the silence of sorrow. It had become the silence that follows a miracle. The Prophet stood there gently breathing, his heart no longer weighed down, but uplifted. Allah had spoken. Allah had defended him. Allah had honored him. And in that sacred moment, a new truth took root in the world. A truth so powerful that no insult could erase it. and no enemy could challenge it. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not cut off. He was connected to the eternal, and his name would echo until the last dawn of this world. The night in Makkah was still heavy, but something inside the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had shifted. The grief that moments ago pressed on his chest like a mountain had begun to dissolve beneath the warmth of revelation. The words of the first verse lingered in his heart like a light that refused to dim. Inna atainaka al-Kawthar. Indeed, we have given you al-Kawthar. He repeated it softly under his breath, letting the divine promise settle into his soul. Every syllable carried a comfort no human could give. Every letter came from the creator of the heavens and the earth. The Quraysh had mocked him. Allah responded by honoring him. Human beings had tried to cut him down. Allah raised him higher. Their insults were small. Allah's promise was vast. So vast that even the mountains could not hold its meaning. Al-Kawthar, a name full of secrets, a word overflowing with blessings, a gift beyond this world, and far beyond the imagination of the people who thought they had defeated him. The prophet stood under the moonlit sky, letting the meaning unfold quietly within him. Revelation was not only words, it was a spiritual experience. It came with a presence, a depth, a knowledge that did not come from this earth. Al-Kawthar, the river of paradise itself, purer than the purest spring, whiter than milk, sweeter than honey, a river that flows beneath the throne of Allah, feeding the fountains of the hereafter, reserved for the prophet on the day of resurrection. Countless authentic narrations would later describe it. Its banks made of gold, its pebbles like pearls, its fragrance unlike anything the world has ever known. But in this quiet moment in Makkah, the prophet understood something deeper. That Al-Kawthar was not only a river, it was abundance, it was honor, it was victory from Allah, in a time when people thought he was defeated. And then the second verse descended, Fasali li rabbika wanhar. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice. The tenderness of this verse touched his heart. It did not rebuke him, it did not command with harshness. It guided him with the gentle firmness of divine wisdom. When pain tries to break you, turn to prayer. When people insult you, stand closer to Allah. When the world feels narrow, open your hands in worship. Prayer was the anchor of his soul, the place where grief melted into trust, where fear transformed into calmness, and where loneliness turned into closeness to the divine. Sacrifice, Allah said. In a world where people sacrifice to idols, the prophet was instructed to offer sacrifice solely for Allah, the one who created life, the one who gives and takes, the one who sees every tear before it falls. This command was not only about ritual, it was about loyalty. It was about focusing on Allah alone, even when surrounded by the noise of mockery and hostility. The prophet closed his eyes gently as the meaning settled. These verses did not simply answer the insults of the Quraysh. They rose above them. They taught a lesson that would echo through generations. When people are cruel, don't respond with cruelty. Respond with worship. He took a slow, steady breath. The night air felt different now, softer, lighter. Almost as if the world itself was bowing in silence to the weight of the verses that had just descended. Then came the third verse, a verse that would overturn the arrogance of the Quraysh, a verse that would reshape history, a verse that would protect the prophet until the final hour of this world. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Indeed, it is your enemy who will be cut off. This verse struck like thunder, not loud but decisive. The prophet stood still, absorbing the words. Allah had answered the whispers of the Quraysh with a declaration of truth so clear, so final, that no enemy could escape its promise. The ones who mocked him, the ones who celebrated his pain, the ones who believed his legacy would fade. Allah said they would be erased, they would be forgotten, their power temporary, their insults meaningless, their names buried by history. He did not need to defend himself. Allah defended him. He did not need to argue. Allah spoke for him. And that moment, in the deep quiet of Makkah, was the turning point. A chapter closed. Another opened. The prophet's heart, heavy moments ago, now beat with strength and certainty. He looked toward the Kaaba, glowing faintly under the night sky. The city was still hostile. The trials had not ended. But something profound had changed. Allah had promised him victory. Allah had promised him abundance. Allah had promised him a legacy that would never be cut off. And promises from Allah do not fail. The night of grief had become a night of healing. The silence of sorrow had become a silence filled with divine certainty. And the man the Quraysh thought was cut off was now the man whose name would echo across the earth till the last moment of time. The revelation settled gently into the heart of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, like cool rain falling on dry earth. The verses of Surah Al-Kawthar had come with comfort, but they also came with direction, a path forward, a way to rise above grief and insult. The words echoed softly, Fa sali li rabbika wanhar. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice. This was not only a command, it was a lifeline. Prayer had always been his refuge, the place where his heart found rest and his mind found clarity. It was during prayer that the world's cruelty faded, replaced by the peace of standing before the one who never abandons his servants. But now Allah was telling him something deeper. Let worship be your answer. Not anger, not argument, not retaliation, just worship. This was a lesson for every believer who would come after him. That rising again begins with falling into sujud, that healing begins when the forehead touches the ground, that honor comes from Allah alone. And then there was the second part of the verse, wanhar, and sacrifice. It reminded him, and the entire ummah, that devotion is not only words, it is action. Sacrifice for Allah meant giving from the heart, giving with sincerity, giving without expecting praise or recognition from anyone. While the Quraysh laughed and celebrated what they thought was his defeat, Allah was lifting him higher through acts of worship. Prayer and sacrifice became symbols of his unwavering trust. They were markers of a heart connected to heaven, not shaken by the noise of the world. The prophet stood quietly, absorbing this lesson. His grief had not vanished, but it had changed shape. It was no longer a heavy stone pressing on his chest. It had become a reminder of Allah's closeness, a doorway to deeper faith. And as he stood under the night sky, he felt strength returning to him, flowing through him like a calm stream. The command to rise again had awakened something powerful inside him. Resilience, certainty, determination. He knew the trials would continue. He knew the Quraysh would not stop. He knew more hardships lay ahead. But now he also knew this. Allah was with him, the Lord who commands the stars, who shapes the winds, who brings life and takes it. That same Lord had spoken directly to him, comforted him, guided him, and that was enough. He walked through the quiet paths of Makkah again, but his steps were different now. They were steady, they were sure. Every breath he took felt lighter. Every beat of his heart carried the rhythm of revelation. He understood something profound. True strength is not in how loudly you respond to your enemies, but in how deeply you trust Allah when the world tries to break you. Prayer would be his shield. Sacrifice would be his statement. Patience would be his victory. And through this quiet obedience, Allah was preparing him for something greater. A future no insult could erase and no enemy could stop. The night of sadness had become the night he learned how to rise again. The night was still, but something in the air had shifted forever. The verses of Surah Al-Kawthar were now part of the world, etched into the prophet's heart and recorded by the angels. And there was one verse that fell like a final, decisive blow to the arrogance of the Quraysh. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Indeed, it is your enemy who will be cut off. Today, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the most remembered human being in history. His name is mentioned across the world every second. His message lives in the hearts of billions. His life changed nations, shaped civilizations, and guided humanity for centuries. Meanwhile, the names of those who mocked him faded into silence, exactly as Allah promised. As the dawn settled over Makkah, the Prophet stepped forward with a renewed heart. He knew challenges still awaited him, but he also knew this: Allah never abandons his servants, Allah honors whom he wills. and Allah's promise is always true. The story of Surah Al-Kawthar was not only his healing, it became a healing for every believer who faces pain, loss, or cruelty. A reminder that the one who gave comfort to his prophet is the same one who watches over us today.